Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon and welcome to another Webinar Wednesday hosted by the Cal State Bakersfield Small Business Development Center. Good afternoon. I'm Kelly Bearden. We're here for webinar number 323. It is July 24th. We've got Celeste Young-Ramos with us today talking about workforce violence, the new prevention plan that is required of small employers in the state of California. We'll get into all of that stuff, talk about some other things that are happening. But first, July 24th, I remember during the pandemic, we'd talk about a lot of birthdays and things like that. So it kind of hit me ironically today that on July 24th, I had a grandson that was born 7 years ago. A little kid I call Augusto de Mucho. And then I had a grandparent born a lot longer than that. So here I am in the middle of a grandson and a grandparent on a July 24th birthday. So happy birthday to anybody, including Barry Bonds, who has a birthday on July 24th. But our focus today is going to be on new California laws and regulations. And particularly, we're going to get a big look today at the new California legislative program called the Workplace Violence Protection Plan. And we're also going to get into some other news and updates and other programs that you might need to know. Some people are saying our economic corner reflects boring and economic times, but, we found a little bit something in there to talk about from an economic perspective. Had a lot of focus on Webinar Wednesday over the last 6 weeks or so on raising capital, on fundraising, and other events that reflected that. So our capital quarter is just going to reflect on some of the recent lenders and their programs that we've had. We will have some tools and resources to help you thrive. You do, please, if you have questions today, go to the Q&A box and put those in the Q&A box. They will be answered after our presentation today. I think you might have a lot of questions about today's topic. I know I'm going to. Also, all the resources will be put in our chat box by our webinar producer, Maureen Busher-Dang. So that'll be in the chat box today. And no poll today. No poll. Couldn't come up with a good poll question. So we're just going to move along. But remember, if you have something to add as far as a question, put it in the Q&A box. Also, we'll jump into the chat where Maureen will be filtering that. So let's start with our economic corner. As I mentioned, the economy remains steady. Some say boring. And by steady, I guess that means we didn't have the recession that many planned for a lot of going back to, the last couple of years of this recession that was coming on, that was going to affect all of our small businesses, or at least the vast majority of them. So the economy kind of remains steady, no recession. We did have some inflation that bothered us for quite a while, but it is actually subsiding somewhat as well. I guess the big economic news this week was that the U.S. unemployment rate is now over 4%. Now, sure, here in California, we're used to it being quite a bit higher than that. And in the San Joaquin Valley, where we are located, every county is much higher than that, and even higher than the state rate. So, but the thing that's significant is that 4%, actually 4.1%, is up from 3.4 earlier this year. A lot of people are saying that the hottest job market in a generation is over. And that job market was the one that came out of COVID and actually really had a lot of issues with people finding employees and things like that. But the unemployment rate is up, and it is a trend that is continuing. The one thing positive out of that was that a lot of the job growth that we're seeing, and you can still have job growth, of course, when you have unemployment that's moving higher, but the job growth and the jobs are coming from small businesses. So for a long time, we couldn't find employees for our small businesses, but now they're out there. So Economic Corner is going to focus on good positive news from the jobs report. And also, we're also concerned about interest rates and things like that. And, inflation has continued to waver. And by waver, it is seems to be, slightly going up one month and then going down the next. So we keep getting kind of a wavering effect from inflation. We're looking for those rate cuts to come in the future that will reduce some of the SBA loans and some of the other loan interest rate payments that a lot of small businesses have really been saddled with as it rose during those adjustable loan rates rose during the pandemic. One thing we've talked about a lot this year is this wonderful beneficial ownership information. And this was just kind of a little snapshot of the FinCEN website. And this is a government actually mandated requirement that those that have, either an LLC, a corporation, and generally those that are less than 20 employees. So basically businesses that it's hard for the government. And when I say the government here, I'm talking about the Financial Crimes Network. And they are looking to reduce a lot of the financial crimes. And so their acronym, of course, is FinCEN. And this is kind of their information report on how you filed the BOI report and the e-filing system. So we've been talking a lot about this and a lot of the serious fines and penalties for those that do not comply. If you were in business, of course, before 2024, so if you were actually a LLC, an S corporation, or another entity, even some nonprofits that need to reply, it is best to get the information and to figure out if you're going to need to do that, because you were given an extension throughout 2024. Only new corporations, new LLCs, nonprofits that have a for-profit arm, and other entities are required to actually file this within 60 days after beginning business. So again, or actually 30 days. I think it should be 60 days, but it's only 30. So last thing on that is the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. They did come out with these small entity compliance guides that you can pull from their website. But the only problem is they haven't been updated since December 2023 for the English version. And many of the other language versions, you go back to September 2023, and there's been so many rules and law changes and lawsuits and rulings that have come out since then. I'm afraid that they might not be up to date as they could be, but still a good source of information. The Financial Crimes Enforcement Network website to get more information to see if you are required to file this business ownership information form. Okay, on our Capital Quarter, another regular feature here on Webinar Wednesday. Just a couple things for you. One of them is our CSUB SBDC YouTube channel is loaded with funding options. And by that, I mean we have had a lot of webinar speakers and guests that have talked recently. We have the Eastern Sierra Capital Summit that is up. And so there are tons of funding options that are up there. And we have SBDC consultants that are working with clients, no charge at all, to actually find and access a lot of this funding that is out there. So the good thing is a lot of the funding that we've talked about are smaller loan amounts. And by smaller loan amounts, higher interest rates do not impact those loans near as much larger projects that have a lot of interest rate risk when interest rates go up to 3 or 4%, or however it's been over the last couple of years. So do if you're interested in some of the programs that we've talked about as far as funding your particular small business, our YouTube channel would be a place to go. We also have our community calendar. And our community calendar is just kind of a little look ahead of some of the things that are going on. And this seemed like a very topical event coming up, since we were talking about probably something that will be mentioned there. And that is the Kern County Hispanic Chamber of Commerce's 2024 mid-year employment law legal update. Say that 3 times fast, I dare you. So that is coming up on the 6th of August. The day before the 7th, actually. So that'll be coming up. That includes lunch, and you can contact the Hispanic Chamber to find out more information about that particular program. Also coming up in September, one of the great programs and partners that we have in our Central California SBDC region, and that is with an organization called Nurture that actually does classes in English and Spanish and shows you the business side of starting a home daycare business. Or if you're already in a home daycare business, it provides you with some key business techniques, some concepts, and some really good business understanding about how to make money watching other children. So the 12-week online class is going to be beginning in September 4th. They do have a $1,000 startup grant. And really one thing that they do really excel in this program also is with the licensing. The state of California licensing probably doesn't surprise you, but it's not the easiest thing for new home-based childcare businesses to do. And so that is one of the great things, but really understanding how to make money in these particular businesses that provide such a great benefit for our entire communities, provide a place for our children to go and learn, and a place where we can then go off and go to work. So the next one's coming up. You can text to learn more at 833-241-3994. So know anybody that's interested in actually starting a home daycare business, there's the place to go. So here at the SBDC, we might have stole this from some financial service company in the past that might have said, hey, membership has its privileges. And we agree. You can sign up to speak with an SBDC advisor. And as an SBDC client, and that's where you sign up at CSUBSBDC.com, get started. Then you get all the keys to the car, and that's all the keys to the toolbox also. And yes, we are going to have to get a bigger toolbox because we're getting so many tools in here. And talking about a few of them, just real quick, a live plan, an excellent business plan, interactive platform that uses AI and other tools to make it really, really functional if you're looking to write a business plan. We do have a new one that we talked about last week or last time we met, and that was Vertical IQ. Mentioned that a little bit coming forward. Really unique programs, including the Clayton Leadership Transition Plan. Morgan Clayton and his family provided information on how they went through a change in generation from one generation to the next in this transitional plan that was outstanding. Well, of course, we have our quality risk management field book and some reports from that on insurance being so challenging. So a lot of tools that are available if you're an SBDC client. And I did mention Vertical IQ, and we will have a program on that real soon. I'm finding it really fascinating jumping in and learning this particular platform. Learning all about the power of industry intelligence, to conduct more productive sales conversations and ways to help you drive your business that way. But there's also some actionable, convenient, and focused sales tools that can help you. So beyond tools, there's a lot of research that you can do as far as market research on your particular clients and data and just some really great information. So your SBDC consultant is learning this right now, and advisors throughout the network are becoming really pretty sharp at this Vertical IQ. A lot of money we pay for this particular platform to assist you, so reach out and get some of that information. Our CSUB SBDC YouTube channel, we're up to 423 subscribers. If you've subscribed, thank you. You will get a copy of this. You'll get a notification when this particular webinar is uploaded on demand. So if you want to rewatch some of today's details, this is the place to go. You'll see that we have, like I had mentioned earlier, a lot of funding. The Eastern Sierra Capital Summit was recently posted, and as long as microloans and accessing capital for small businesses and insurance and other things. So if you have the inclination, go and subscribe to our YouTube channel and find any of the 277 videos that we have posted up there. We'd love your feedback from today's webinar. If it's assisted you, you can do that a variety of different ways in a survey afterwards. You can actually go to a chat. You can actually go to our business profile page and leave us a review. If you have any issues, don't leave me, please. If you have any issues, please call us directly and we can help work with you through any particular issues. And you can contact us, and here's where you sign up again at our confidential, no-cost advising, no obligation with expert, experienced consulting team that we have here at the Cal State Bakersfield SBDC. So you just sign up on our website and we'll arrange an initial consultation with you and try to assist with any of the issues you are dealing with or any of the funding challenges you seek out there. Which brings us to our special guest today. And today's special guest is Celeste Young-Ramos, and she founded the Restaurant Success Center. And actually, it is a great service that she provides, great experience in food, going back to restaurants, and with a lot of work working with managers to develop their skills and maximize profits. Then she actually jumped into the HR side of things. And the HR side of things, she works with our clients and also as a Central California SBDC regional consultant, regional advisor. She works on also restaurant and human resource issues. Industry experience, many years of advising large franchise operations, and has worked with hundreds of independent food and also restaurant operators of all kinds. She cut her teeth at Denny's restaurants with a large franchisor down there as the human resource manager and also as their director of 3 decades of food service. Celeste, it's great to have you back. Welcome.
Well, thank you. I'm always happy to be invited here. I hope everybody out there is keeping cool during this sweltering hot day today. And I'm glad to see you guys are here today to learn and let me share with you guys a little bit about one of our newest laws, which went in effect on July 1st, the Workplace Violence Prevention Plan. So while I'm getting the slides ready, if you could put in the chat, if you have ever had workplace violence in your type of business, and put in there, what kind of business you have. You don't necessarily have to put your business name, but I'd be curious, are you a mechanic shop and you had an incident of workplace violence? Just kind of what was the main category? Don't fill us in on all the gory details, but I just kind of like to see how many of us have experienced this in our workplace. I'm not seeing anything coming in yet, so hopefully that's good news that nobody's had any issues. But today what I'm going to talk about is the Workplace Violence Prevention Plan. It's California Senate Bill 553. And it was passed a year ago, but didn't go in effect until July 1st of this year. So some of you may already have the plan in place and may be here just to get some updates on it. Others of you may say, I don't know anything about this. Well, you're in luck. I'm going to go through a general overview of all the particulars. And if you have any questions, please make sure that you raise your hand or put them in the chat. I'll be glad to answer them. So I see we have one comment that came in. Someone works in manufacturing. They had a verbal threat of physical violence. Well, that can be quite scary. Verbal threats, we have to take as serious as a physical threat because oftentimes they will lead to that. So, the best prevention for anything is to be proactive about it. All right, so let's get into the meat and potatoes. I'm going to skip my intro there because you guys already know me. But you may be surprised to know that nearly 2 million American workers have workplace injuries from violence every single year. So that is an incredible amount of people that go to work, expect just to get a nice paycheck and have a pleasant environment, and actually may have types of threats, whether they're verbal threats or all the way, well, these are actually workplace injuries. So these are more than just the verbal threats. These are when people were actually experienced injury and it was reported to workers' comp. We also have another one just came in, ag industry, husband, wife, and boyfriend all involved. Okay, well, that's quite a bit as well. And that's going to fall into one of the types of violence we'll talk about today. But in California alone, last year, 57 people died due to workplace violence, which, is quite a bit. And so that was one thing where we're starting to see all of these kinds of violence attacks coming into the workplace. The state wanted to start taking some action to help us educate and be in a proactive mode. So here are some of the businesses that have the highest risk. And it's not necessarily like, well, healthcare workers have a lot of risk. Taxi cab drivers are the #1 for murders. But these are some of the characteristics that could make your business attractive to violence. If you exchange money, so people are passing money back and forth, if employees are working alone, or if they're working at night or during the early morning hours where there's not a lot of other customers there, if you have high value items like money and jewelry, you are guarding money or valuable property or possessions. So that's going to run into like the security guards. You're performing public safety and social welfare functions in the community. You're working with clients that may be passengers or customers or students and are known to have a suspected history of violence. Or you may have employees with a history of assault or who have exhibited belligerent, intimidating, or threatening behaviors to others. So here are the requirements of the State Bill 553. It's called the Workplace Violence Prevention Plan. And qualified businesses, which I'll go over who's going to be exempt and who's going to have to go and actually put this in place. But the steps that are required is that you have to do a risk assessment where you'll look at your business and say, what are the types of violence that we could experience here? And what are some of the steps we're going to take by writing policies and training our employees so that we can try to eliminate or reduce the risk? Then the second part is creating a workplace violence prevention plan. If any of you have created an injury illness prevention plan for OSHA, it's very similar to that. In fact, they're using the same format. The second part is you have to assign a plan administrator. So this will be the person that's going to be totally in charge of all of the mechanics and pieces of the plan. Also, with this law, we have to involve our employees in all steps, and I'll go over all those possible steps we can squeeze them in. I think this adds a little layer of complexity to the rollout because you need to have them involved in as many layers of the program as possible, but it also can help get engagement with the rest of the employees if they have someone there that's speaking up on their behalf. Another part is that you have to have reporting of each incident, a system for that, and have an investigation process. So when we get reports of violence, whether it's verbal or physical, we need to take a report and then take some kind of action to look into it, stop it if it's occurring, or put some preventative actions in there. And then the plan and the training of the employees is required to be done by July 1st, 2024. So we're a couple weeks past the deadline of that. I read the bill quite extensively, and we're going to put it in the chat. So if you guys want to read it on the side as well, it's like 33 pages long. I went through the whole thing and I didn't see anything about what the penalty was if you don't comply. But I'm sure there's always a penalty. Whether they come up with that later or it's embedded in there somewhere that I just didn't see it, but I scanned over it several times. So here I'm going to go over the people that are not required to do this plan. So healthcare facilities that are covered by Title VIII, certain facilities that are operated by the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, certain law enforcement agencies. And the ones that I think are going to apply more to us as small business owners are going to be employers with fewer than 10 employees present at any given time and that are not accessible to the public. So, I questioned on this one, like, are we talking about 10 employees on our whole schedule? And the answer came back as no, it's 10 employees that are working at a specific shift. So, you may, have 10 or, 15 employees or something like that. And you may end up like having 1 or 2 shifts on the weekend, perhaps, where you have that many people on staff. So you do have to take that into consideration. And the other one is you don't have to train people that are telecommuting from a location of their own choosing. So like people working at home and that are not under the employer's control. So it could be like your marketing people, if you have people that are doing marketing or accounting or things like that, that just aren't dealing with customers at all. So if you have a business where your customers don't have any interaction with the public, maybe you're manufacturing or something like that, then you're not going to have to do this. But I know some of you are probably going to start popping off the call, but I really recommend that you kind of listen as we go through, because even if you may fall short of that 10 threshold, it's still a topic that we really need to address in our workplaces nowadays. And the more that you can be preventative, even if you're not governmentally required, is generally going to be a good cost savings to you in the long run. And will also make you look like an employer of choice because you care about the employee's well-being. And if you're like me, my employees were like my family. So I definitely want to take care of them. So let me give you what the definition of workplace violence is. And I'm going to close up my little window here because I'm getting blocked on some of these things. But here's the definition. It's the threat or use of physical force against an employee with or without a weapon or a common object that could be used as a weapon. So that could be the pipe wrench at the mechanic's place or you know, at the plumbing thing. It doesn't have to be a gun or a knife. It can be something that can be picked up and knock someone over the head with, right? And it's highly likely that it's going to result in an injury, a psychological trauma or stress, regardless of whether the employee sustains an injury or not. So we're talking here verbal threats where people may say, you know, I'm going to kick your butt after work, or I'm going to kill you, or it could be, you know, a slap, someone grabbing your arm, you know, anytime that someone is feeling very physically threatened. It could be even invading space where you're constantly screaming at someone at a very close range, even if you may not be saying you're going to hurt them, but you're using such a tone of voice that it's kind of a violent act. So those are the things that are going to fall under workplace violence. Now, if an employee, for instance, has someone attack them and they have to respond in self-defense, then that's not going to be considered workplace violence. However, we need to make sure our employees don't know that they understand they just don't have the ability to be the hot-tempered employee and someone ticks you off, just get in a fight and you're going to be not in trouble. You know, it's like we should always be training our employees that, you know, to back up, stay a safe distance from people if they can tell they're aggressive. Never go outside with them, you know, because to a lot of people, let's go outside to some means let's go out and have a fight, and to others it means I want to have a more private conversation. But we really don't want to risk that in our work environment. So, you know, I always felt that if my employee, you know, had to, if they could extradite themselves from a threat coming to them, that was the best. But if a customer hit them and they needed to protect themselves, then that kind of gave them some grace, as long as they just didn't go way above and beyond that. I had one of my managers actually have an employee's angry husband want to talk to him about her schedule, and went outside with them and they got in a fight and the guy pushed him, and he could have backed away and left, but he ended up like beating the customer up and popped his eyeball out of his socket. So, you know, that's where we draw the line. You know, it's like you had the opportunity to keep it at a more safe level, but you let your emotions really get in control of you. Okay. Now I want to share with you what are considered the 4 different types of violence. And when we're like filling out some of our reports and things, we're going to be focusing on these areas. And as you're doing your risk assessment, you also need to be looking at your business and saying, are there people from these areas of violence that we need to kind of have a plan in place ahead of time so that we may be able to prevent some of the issues? So the first type is outsiders. So these are people that have no business even being in your restaurant or your business. And I'll probably say restaurant 10 times today, guys, so I apologize. But they will be like the homeless person who really isn't coming in to buy, but they're on your property and maybe and having a mental state and, you know, threatening people. They could be an armed robber that comes in, you know, or someone coming in to do criminal activity. So they're not your customers. These are people that you don't expect to come in. So that's one group. The second group is what we call client to worker. So these are all of the people that come into the business that we expect that could be threatening our employees or yourselves. So customers, other customers, or if you call them clients, could be patients if you have a medical center, students, inmates, or visitors. Could be vendors as well. So anybody else that comes in that's not an employee-based employee-to-employee situation. The third violence category is worker to worker. So these are present or past employees that are threatening violence to present or former employees, supervisors, or managers. So the disgruntled employee that's mad about their schedule or felt something's been unfair, or it could be an employee that worked for us in the past that is coming in and still has a beef with the company and is making threatening comments to the workers. And I would even be cautious of those types of people, even if they're not talking to workers in violent language or threatening language, but they may come in and talk to other customers and make a scene. Those kind of people we need to definitely be cautious of and, you know, set limits for their entry into the business. So, you know, sometimes you have a worker. I've had a couple workers in the past that they were like very hot tempered and they needed to be terminated for their bad behavior. And, you know, they could make threatening comments, you know, or it's okay for you, like if you terminate someone, to say that we don't want you to patronize our business in the future. That's totally okay for you to do. Okay. So sometimes that's what you need to do so that they know that they're not allowed. And now with the new law, we can even take it a step further and we can put a restraining order on them. In the past, it used to be that only a person that was being attacked or threatened could make a restraining order. But with the new law, we as employers can make them as well against other individuals because we need to protect the safety of the employees and the other customers that come into the business. And then our fourth type of violence is acquaintance violence. So these are the people that may not work here, but they have associations with people that do. So it could be the domestic violence issue with one of our employees outside of work that comes into work. You know, they come into the business and try to attack them, or somebody that they owe money to, you know, or, you know, what are some of their affiliations. So these are the four main categories that we're going to be affected by. So look at each one of these and see what is going to affect my business in these categories. And for your employees, you know, a lot of what I've been talking about so far, you know, is a lot of outsiders or other people coming in and doing things. But, you know, we do have that category of worker to worker. So here are some behaviors that might be signals that you need to watch, that their tension level may be getting kind of elevated and could lead to violence. So we've got unexplained absenteeism, change in behavior, decline in job performance, depression, withdrawal, or suicide comments. So if they're making those type of comments, don't just laugh it off. You need to approach them, find out what's going on, give them some referrals. There's a suicide hotline. There's also a domestic violence hotline that are easily Googleable. And I would even have those kind of pulled up and maybe even posted in your business. Resistant to work or persistent complaining about unfair treatment, violation of company policies, emotional responses to criticism with heavy mood swings and even paranoia. Also, if there's like a hero worship of shooters and people that are doing violent crimes, that is often a precursor to them kind of fantasizing or romanticizing that, or talking about, weapons they may be buying other than just normal hunting or things like that, so we just need to be aware of that. And in some states, it's totally fine to carry in public as well. And then the threat of hurting others. I know in my experience, one time my general manager at the restaurant I worked at, he was always kind of had a bad temper. Sometimes he threw things around like a plate, he'd get mad and he'd always be cursing under his breath. And I remember he said to me one day, he says, one of these days, I'm just going to come in and go pow, 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 pow. And, I thought it was a little unprofessional at the time. And it was well before we started seeing all these incidents of shootings and things like that in the workplace. But I'll tell you, 6 months later, he brought a gun to work and he killed himself in the employee bathroom. So, if I had been better educated at the time, I might have known that this isn't something you just kind of overlook. You need to call the HR department or whoever is going to be the person you would contact in your business. The first thing you'll want to do before you can even make your plan is do your risk assessment. So go through your business with your supervisors, and also you're required to have some employees. However, they don't state how many employees you have to have involved. So it could be as little as one. But have them go and walk around, look for things that could be hazards. Are we well lit at night when employees are leaving the business? Is there two people maybe coming to open the business if we're opening at a very early hour where there could be people kind of hidden and jump out? How are we closing the business? And then, looking at each one of those categories, and I kind of did that for like a restaurant. Like we would face in violence level 1, the homeless, also armed robberies. And sometimes we had to even have procedures for banking if we took money to the bank, because if people know you have money and you're very predictable about your routes and the timing and things, they could try to rob you. Then we had, intoxication. So these were customer ones. Angry guests that may started out by an angry guest, but totally turn into fits of violence. We have disgruntled employees. And also we've had some situations where domestic violence has come into the workplace. So those were just a few in my type of business. I'd be curious if you guys could put in the chat if you may have some other kind of people that you might see as violent threats to your business. The more we share between ourselves, the more we might catch some we had forgotten. So someone's asking, would an employee as a victim of violence be entitled to workers' compensation benefits? Yes, they are, particularly if it happens at work, or even if it happens off-site, but it was by an employee and it started in the workplace. So I'll be going over some of the things that we have to report with that. And, recently I had a client call me, it's like one of their employees was a gang member, and he was dating the hostess, and he just beat her to a pulp one day. And then he was like, well, what do I do? Do I fire them both? It's like, well, you have no right to fire her, but you can fire him. Even though it was outside, he brought that issue into the workplace. But like with any type of thing where you're having something like this, where, it's a questionable situation, I would always get an HR person involved or contact your legal representation. Because there's always extenuating things, but it doesn't matter whether they did something to provoke the person that beat them up or not. It's still domestic violence, which is a crime in our state. So these risk assessments you want to do on a regular basis. And in the template that OSHA provides you that you can use, or you can create your own, they have a section in there where they'll ask you, like, how frequently are you going to have these meetings, to do the assessment? Who will be doing it? Who will be involved? How quickly will you get newest situations you identify corrected? Okay. But whatever you do in your plan, you want to make sure you're writing something that you can actually execute. So if you think, oh, they're probably requiring me to have this violent safety meeting every month, they're not. They're saying you decide. It could be every 3 months, it could be every 6 months. But once you state that you're going to do it, until you change that verbiage in your plan, that is what they're going to look like. So think about your time and what's going to be realistic for you. Now, as we're going through all of these different risks that we need to look at, so that we can, in our plan, create policies like, this is what we want you to say or do if someone threatens you verbally. This is what we want you to do if you're being armed robbed. This is what we want you to do in a verbal, if we get a written threat over internet, we want you to save your texts, your social media, because sometimes they can be taken down. Who do we want you to report it to, et cetera, et cetera. So your plan needs to be very detailed, not that just like we don't allow, verbal threats or fighting or et cetera. You need to tell them what to do if those situations happen. And the law doesn't say that you have to discuss active shooter, but there have been so many instances of this over the last few years that I highly encourage you to put that in there. So between 2015 and 2023, there have been over 400 mass shootings. These are incidents with gun violence that injure or kill 4 or more people in the United States. So every single week, there's an incident of active shooting. Some of them can be these smaller things where it's more random, maybe gunfire from a gang related or anger. Somebody gets angered in your business and, they may not even intentionally think they're going to shoot anybody, but they got a gun and now they pull it out. And the next thing you know, they've shot people and then they usually run and leave, But there are other ones that are more planned, And, I was just kind of sitting there thinking about this, and I was like, there's been 3 incidences where it has come very close to home for me. In 2006, one of the Denny's that I was in charge of in Pismo Beach had somebody that was angered, was but more mental kind of angered, not really knowing anybody in the restaurant, but came in and killed 3 people and wounded 2 others. And we had to close the business, and it was closed for over a year. We had to totally remodel the business because we felt that it was just we needed to change the whole environment, So it was a lot of cost to us. We had to bring in people to give counseling to the employees, and we had to then rehire all the staff because many people didn't want to come back as well as customers, and that was like the first time I'd ever really heard about that. Back then it was like, oh, another postal worker kind of got nuts, right? And they would go shoot one person or so, but this was like one of the first starts here in our state. And then we had, in 2019, Saugus High School, 20 miles from here. My best friend was working there, classroom right next door to her. 5 people were shot, 3 people were killed. And a place that I go twice a year, or used to go, they're not at the same location anymore, the Border Grill in Thousand Oaks. Guy came in, it's kind of like a dance, dinner, dining, and more clubbish, like country music some nights, things like that. The guy came in, ex-military guy came in and killed 13 people. That was 3 that I could kind of say I was involved, or I was at the place where these things happened, or I had a very close friend that it touched. So I think we need to be more proactive. and be prepared for this. Now, the FBI created an excellent video that we'll put in the chat for you. It's a 3-minute long video. It does use a restaurant as an example. So I was very attached to that, but it's excellent. It shows you need to run, you need to hide, and the last choice is to fight. And it talks about what to do after the shooting, you know, what's going to happen with the police and everything. I highly encourage you to show that to your employees, I think, but it is jarring. I mean, I got teary-eyed when I watched it. So, you know, you might want to view it before you show your employees, but I think it was excellent information. And you guys also need to have a space designated in at your business of like, your employees need to know where the evacuation routes are, you know, and I would quiz them on that. You know, if I'm working back here in this area, what's the closest distance to get out of this building if something goes haywire, you know? And if there is an active shooting or something where we have to evacuate, whether it's this or a natural disaster or whatever, what's going to be our outside rendezvous point so that we can make sure everybody's safe, you know? And do you have your like emergency contact list available so that if you needed to grab and go with it, you could? You know, I had a manager one time that actually had a medical emergency, you know, and it's like, oh, his file is over at this one location, but I'm traveling, visiting a bunch of different restaurants. And we couldn't even call his spouse because the emergency contacts weren't readily available. We don't want them to be posted so everyone can see them, but the management needs to have them somewhere where it's going to be very quick. We can get right to it if we need to. So definitely check this out. I thought it was a very good tool, very professionally made. Now, if you are required to do the plan, you need to establish a plan administrator. So this is going to be the person that's going to be responsible for the whole program. So like generally with small businesses, it might be the business owner. For larger business, there may even be a department like the risk and safety department is in charge of it. But if you're the owner and you're not going to be active at all, like you're kind of like the absentee owner, you have management that are really running the store. You may need to put them as the plan administrator with you being the overseer of it. So there'll be a place for you to write down who's going to do each responsibility, you know, who's going to train the people, who's going to be responsible for creating the plan and administering, you know, all the support systems you may need after some kind of violent instance, filing the OSHA reports, etc. Okay. Now they're requiring you to have employees be involved so you can bring them in to do your risk assessments and kind of get their perspective because they're in the workplace closer to the clients than some of us as owners or managers. We can have them work on the creation of the plan so we can all do it together as a meeting. You can involve them in the training so you can ask them for their feedback on, you know, what are some scenarios that happen in our business or restaurant that we should put in our training. And if they're able to conduct training themselves, have them present a part of it, even if they're just inviting people and welcoming people to your meetings, etc. And then when you have an incident, they ask to have them involved as well in looking at the reports and what was kind of the aftermath steps. Okay, but like I mentioned earlier, it doesn't say how many people have to be involved with that. So we're going to put in the chat box the workers' comp, it's called the Workplace Violence Prevention Plan Template. It's being provided by OSHA. It has spaces in red where you'll go in and fill in your own information and policies. But they want to really see it in detail. I went and wrote one up with a bunch of sample policies and things for people to use. It took me a while. So it's not something that you're going to be able to whip out in an hour. It's going to take you probably 20 hours to do a really good job at it. But I'll tell you, having something is better than nothing, you know? And as I was on more conference calls about it, I was like, oh, I didn't think about that type of violence. I need to add the homeless in, you know, or I need to add this other thing in here as well. Okay. Now, if you get an incident of violence, you have to fill out a violent incident log. And in that template we're sending you, they have all of the requirements and a sample template in there that you can use. So it's kind of saying what happened, what type of violence, what category violence, get a description of what happened. Were there witnesses? Were the police called? Who reported it? The one thing you won't find in there, though, is you're not going to find the names of the people involved. This report needs to be very generic with keeping those kind of out of the conversation, because this can be shown and viewed by other employees if they request it. So you might have that information on the side, have your own folder for all your incidents and investigations. And this form needs to be kept for 5 years, and they need to have several ways that they can report incidences, So they need to be able to come and tell you, you and them fill out the form together, or maybe you have a place where they can download the form and they mail it to you anonymously. Sometimes they say you can have an anonymous tip hotline kind of thing, but most of us small businesses don't have that. You can also have a spot on if you have a website portal, like a lot of payroll companies do, you're able to maybe have a form there where they can report it. But it's pretty straightforward in the thing, in the template. Okay. The other thing is you have to report any workplace violence to OSHA, and you have to put it on the form 300. And if there are any deaths, you have to report those within 24 hours. And you're required to do follow-up coordination of support, like if they need psychological support over seeing something happen, that's your requirement to take care of that. As I mentioned, you're now able to file restraining orders against employees or even customers if they are making violent threats. Okay. The record keeping is going to be most of it will be for a period of 5 years. For all of the bigger things like incident reports and risk analysis and investigation stuff, that needs to be 5 years. For any training that you need to do, you need to keep the training logs, a summary of what happened in the training and who were the people that were in the class that you taught there. Now with that training also, it's hard to just watch a video and have it meet the requirements. Like some companies are offering videos, which they can be a tool, but you also have to have it where the employees can have some interaction to ask the management directly of the business they work at for what we specifically do in this business. So you can watch a 20-minute video or whatever, but then there needs to be a way for them to submit questions, or you meet with them and ask them if they have questions, and you tell them specifically your own policies. And you should be giving them access to the plan that you do develop. Also, employees can request to see the records, like they can request a copy of the plan, they can request a copy of an incident report, and those have to be provided to them within 15 days. And they can be printed, email, or they can have access given to them to a company portal where they can view it. Okay, so the training is required to be done when you roll out your plan. So if you haven't done your plan yet, you just get that going. Maybe set a goal for you to get that done in the next 30 days. And then get everybody involved in the training, whether you have a 1-hour meeting and go over it with all the employees at once, or whether you give them the materials and meet with them separately or ask them to submit questions, etc. But they have to get details about your workplace specific. Then the training has to be conducted once a year, okay? And if you might also have to do additional training if all of a sudden a new workplace violence hazard all of a sudden appears that you didn't have before, and you've made a procedure for it, you need to bring them together to discuss that. You don't need to go over everything else, but you need to notify them and tell them what you'd like to do. Or if you make any significant changes to the plan, we call it the WVPP, like you change the plan administrator, they need to be notified of that. Okay. Actually, I think this is a replication there. Okay. So any questions on the plan or Anything related to workplace violence you'd like to ask?
Well, we do have a couple things in the chat box, Celeste.
Oh, okay. I didn't
No
see them.
questions, nothing in the Q&A.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
A couple things in the chat box. We had a couple of responses about violence in the workplace if they've experienced it, and one was a manufacturing setting and one was an agricultural setting.
Yep.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing those. And I think every industry can be affected for sure. And I'm putting in my email here too as well. I have developed I've created like a workplace violence prevention plan with all kinds of samples of policies that you can use. You can kind of keep or delete ones you like or don't like. Also, I created a 20-minute video in English and in Spanish on how to handle typical workplace violence issues in the workplace. So those are available. You can always contact me at that email there. Okay, and if you need any help customizing your own plan, that's always good to get things customized for yourself.
So Joe did have a question. Would an employee as a victim of a violent workplace incident be entitled to workers' comp benefits?
Yes, they are going to be entitled to workers' comp benefits. So, yep, they'll be able to file for it. And if there's evidence of it, it's going to be very hard to disprove it that it's not a workers' comp claim. So, particularly if police were involved and you've got witnesses, etc. So, yeah, we will be responsible for that.
Well, let's quickly run backwards through the chat box. And a follow-up question to reporting to Cal OSHA, is that 8 or 24 hours?
Well, the law is that you have to generally report any kind of workers' comp incidences within 5 days. But if it's a death situation, you're required to report it within 24 hours. But we hope that will never happen to any of us, right?
Definitely. Okay, so cruising through the chat box in reverse from bottom up. There's the workforce violence prevention plan template. And thank you, Maureen, for putting that in there. The video on the FBI active shooter. Also, we have the legislation from Senate Bill number 553. And let's see what other stuff. Then there's stuff from previously, what I had talked about mostly, the Google reviews, the SBDC, getting started with no-cost consulting. I have a link also, a chat where you can jump in and grab tons of information from Nurture. Quick link to our YouTube channel and the Corporate Transparency Act. So seeing no other questions, any final comments, Celeste?
No, I think that prevention is always the best practice. So even if you're, like I said, smaller company, going and talking to your employees about how you'd like them to handle these very difficult situations that can really get out of control beforehand could save someone's life. So I would definitely take the time to do that. And you could do it in little bits and pieces, a little focus here at one employee meeting, or even a little flyer or something like that about it. So there's a lot of tools out there available.
Well, great information to meet another compliance issue that we might have. So thank you so much for joining us. And that'll do it for webinar number 323. So for Celeste Young-Ramos, I'm Kelly Bearden. We'll be back. Webinar number 324 before you know it. Everybody have a great week, and we'll see you then. Bye-bye.